The League of Women Voters has a long history of providing voter education, and we don't oppose or support any candidate ever. That's a rule. During this forum, the views expressed are those of the candidates, not of the sponsoring organization or League of Women Voters. Copyright ownership of any recordings or transcribed quotations resides with the League of Women Voters. The candidates, their organizations, and their supporters will not use this forum, portions of the forum, or any audio clips or video clips or transcriptions for political advertising or for other purposes without the written permission of the League of Women Voters Solano County. Now, this is a candidate forum, not a debate. The candidates will be asked to respond to questions, to share their thinking, perspectives, and plans to lead. They will not be addressing each other or disputing the comments of their opponent. If they do so, I will intervene as the moderator. We're here to give both candidates the opportunity to share their messages, and it's your job to listen carefully and to make your own judgment on what you need. After the candidates' opening remarks, the forum will open for questions. I will pose initial questions for the candidates. These questions have been written as questions any candidate running for mayor in any city might be asked. They are not crafted specifically for Rio Vista. Both candidates will have 3 minutes each to address these issues. Since we have 2 candidates, we will alternate asking questions between them so that they get equal opportunities to go first and to follow. So both candidates have an equal opportunity to reply. Now, here's your role. The audience is asked to refrain from applauding, booing, cheering, whistling, or in any way demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate. Applause for the candidates will be allowed once, at the conclusion of the forum. Everyone present can suggest questions. Some of you have already done so. We have people over here who will screen the questions because we have a specific way that the questions need to be written. The suggestions need to be brief and specific. All questions must be written to be answered equally by both candidates. There will be no questions posed to specific candidates. We have volunteers at the table who will screen them, and the screeners then will pass the ones on that fit the standard that we have, and I will then ask the questions from the floor. We will begin with opening statements from the candidates. They will have 4 minutes for opening and closing remarks. We have a timekeeper sitting in front who will hold up cards as each speaker's time is nearing the agreed time limit. So, we have our 2 candidates here, and I'm very pleased that Edwin and John are able to participate in this forum because it appears that the community is interested when you have standing room only. So we will, our opening statement, Edwin will give the first opening statement.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you, League of Women's Voters, for hosting this event. I'm very excited about it. 20 years ago, my wife and I moved to Rio Vista. And the first place we went, we actually had a business here for 27 years, but 20 years ago we moved to town. And the first place we went to was Foster's Bighorn. And we sat at the bar. Of course, we were in awe of all the animals. But more importantly, interestingly, we sat at the bar and I looked to the right and I looked to the left and I saw 70-year-olds and I saw 21-year-olds at the bar, and everyone was communicating with each other. And that was really my first taste of what community was all about, how you come from a large city. That was 20 years ago. 20 years later, and a few days, the Downtown Association hosted our first true farm-to-table event. And it was a huge success, and we sold out within 2 weeks of it. And I was once again reminded of the power of our community. Lamb was provided by Amy Livestock. That lamb was farmed on the Andersons, on the Hamiltons, on the Andersons and the McCormick's property. The vegetables were provided by local farmers via Sustainable Solano. The endive that was in our soup was provided by California Endive, that's right down the street here. The bread, the desserts, the cheese, the butter, every single thing that we had there was provided by local artisans. But most importantly, it was about the people that attended and that participated in our community for not 5 years, not 10 years, not 20 years, but literally for generations in this community. Mr. Bill Dutra's family owns a national company that employs 400 employees across this country. But he got his start in Rio Vista. And when he started in Rio Vista, he never forgot about that. And they put back into this community. You think about the Amy's, the Simonsons, the Rotary, and others. These people built our city pool. That was not done by City Hall. That was done by the community. Our chairs, Lyra Supermarket. They've been around for, Mr. Lyra started up with the help of Mr. Dutra. That market has put literally into this community hundreds of thousands of dollars into this community. And yet, Jim Lyra drives a beat-up old truck. Our chairs, the Gomes family, the Spradling family, each has both given money and sweat labor to make our community better. And now their children are doing exactly the same thing in our community because they care. The latest project on Main Street is literally out of the love for this community. But the Gomes, the Spradlings, and the Lyras, also, if you look across this parking lot, you look at that Veterans Home, that was built by them through Habitat for Humanity. When Habitat for Humanity came to this town and was going to help with this project, they were blown away by the community. Jim McPherson, same thing. He did the downhill racers. The Andersons, the McCormicks, all of those groups have participated. They don't even vote in Rio Vista, but they care so deeply about what happens here. Beth and Michael, Andrea, Ben's friends. These are all new people to our community, but they're part of our community because they participate in our community. So when asked why I want to serve as your mayor, I'm doing this because I live side by side with everyone. I've worked at beer booths. I started the farmers market. I coach cross country. I'm doing this to ensure a strong downtown. Okay, sorry. My term I work with Half's Taps. I work with Ben's friends. I work with Aaron Lane to ensure that their businesses are running smoothly. And I do that because I want them to stay here and I care deeply about our community. So this is all about connecting all of our communities, whether you live in Homecoming, whether you live in Vineyard Bluffs, whether you live in Trilogy, where I do now, or whether any community, we need to be connected both physically and culturally. And that is why I feel I'm the best candidate.
I know it's tough. I know it's tough, but no applause until the very end when we can applaud for both candidates, please. Okay, so John, you're up. 4 minutes.
Good evening, my name is John Lompa. Hello, fellow Rio Vista, and welcome to the state.
The mic is not working.
Turn it on. Yep. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Sometimes too close. Okay, hi. Hello, fellow Rio Vistans. My name is John Lompa, and welcome, legal women voters. I really appreciate the opportunity for this forum. I believe in good politics. People need to know where people stand. So my wife and I started coming to Rio Vista around 6 years ago, and it was just me looking on Google one night for a waterfront restaurant in the Delta. We ended up at the Point, and we drove into town at night, and we were kind of charmed by it, and it turned into several years of weekend drives to Rio Vista, like every single weekend. And that evolved into, through the Discover Rio Vista magazine, we saw the house for sale at 5th and Main. And Stacy and I have been antiquing together since we were teenagers, so we fell in love with that house. Loved everything old with architecture. We really fell in love with it, like tears the day that it closed. So when we looked at the house, we saw opportunity for a bed and breakfast immediately. We were looking at it for fun. We left, wanted to buy it. And then we felt like Rio Vista, like I didn't know Rio Vista politics. I had no clue about Rio Vista politics until maybe a year and a half ago when I started going to city council meetings to complain about how long it was taking to get permits to open a business and to do a parking lot. So then I started further looking at city council agendas. I heard about the swimming pool was the first thing that probably really caught my ear when I heard it's only open for a very limited season and costing the city near $200,000. I thought, wow, that number seems incorrect. Still don't know why it costs that much and why we don't have a full pool season. Then I saw last year the studies that were ordered for all the rate increases this year. And each study was more than $100,000. There was 3 of them that I voted in just very fast. 300,000. So that's them basically studying us about, they have to do the studies to do the increases. So that's when I really started getting ingrained on spending. Notice the general plan costs $550,000. I was part of the general plan workshop in December of 2022. Stacy and I were invited kind of as stakeholders because we had bought property. And by the end of the meeting, I realized there were developers there that they felt we needed another 1,000 units downtown to get businesses. So I realized through our experience, businesses have been discouraged. I've heard it from many people. We now open 2 businesses. We're going to open a bed and breakfast soon and a bakery cafe. But this town needs an economic development department. It also needs to throw out the red carpet to any new business, which it has not been doing. And the budget is the number one issue right now by far, so we can accomplish other things.
Thank you, John. Okay, so the opening statements lead us into some questions. And we're going to alternate asking first response between the 2 candidates. So, John, you get the first stab, first question. What do you see as the mayor's primary role?
I see the mayor as primary role as to run the city. The mayor is the one that directs all the departments. And I feel the mayor is responsible to worry about the good of everybody in the city, not just individuals. I see a lot of that in city council and I don't like it. I feel the mayor should be the key voice for the people, especially when public comment is given. And I've had personal experience and realized recently that even with the overwhelmingly public comment from many people saying not to vote on something, and then the city council votes on it anyways, that there really isn't the will of the people anymore. And I feel the mayor should definitely be worried about the will of the people being carried out. The mayor should worry about each department doing a good job. They should keep track of who's doing a good job, especially when we're talking about money. I'm aware of many misspendings, if you would say, or uncollected monies right in the midst of we're going to have a sales tax increase and just shut down the youth center and having fancy events in that youth center right now just weeks after we closed it. I believe the mayor should do everything in their power to make sure that the money is well spent in the city. And I believe that not just with the current council, but there is a culture here of misspending and miscollecting potentially from developers. And I believe the mayor should want to uncover and find out where we're at all times and not just ignore what's going on.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for the question. Great question. So the responsibility of the mayor is pretty simple. We hire the city manager. The city manager is the one that runs our staff, manages our staff. And our staff, if anyone has ever run a city, run a business, you hire good people around you, and those good people run. You don't micromanage them every day, ask them why they're spending money on this or spending money on that. That's why we spend so much effort in hiring the city manager that we have today. Our city manager today came from Corning, and she came from Corning, and we hired her because it's a similar sized community as ours, one, and two, because she was fiscally responsible and actually turned that city around. They were running at deficits, and she resolved those issues. So that's why we brought her on. The staff that they put together is amazing. From our finance director to our assistant city manager, all these people were hired, and they were hired at the highest level. And so our responsibility, or my responsibility as your mayor, is to be the strategic thinker and to think up here, to not think down here. I'm here to bring our community together and to figure out how to have connected streets, and then to go to our budget and figure out how we can make things like that happen. So we deal with municipal code. When we talk about economic development, what we do is we start to be, 3 years ago when I got on council, the reason why I got onto council was really because I was on planning commission and I started to see things that I wanted to affect change on. So for instance, when ordinances were being restricted on businesses, I realized that by being on council, I would be able to make changes there. When I saw that there are municipal codes that were impacting people in a negative way, I said, that's when I need to get involved, and those are the types of things we need to change. So I'm not operating down here, I'm operating up here and looking out for all of your needs and at a strategic level.
Thank you. Yeah, you're going to be first on the next question. So the next question is, what are the most pressing issues for the mayor of Rio Vista now and in the next few years?
Sure. We, and everyone has known because social media went ballistic, we have a deficit in our city. And it's a structural deficit, and it started out at $500,000 and now it's $500,000. And this is one of the reasons why we're proposing this 1% sales tax increase. That is obviously a pressing issue, and we need to get our hands wrapped around that. Economic development is a huge deal because when you think about one of the big concerns of the community is you raise taxes by 1%, salaries continue to increase. At some point, we're going to eat into that $700,000 that we believe that could be used on streets and other projects that you guys want to see. So we at the same time need to work on economic development, and economic development means putting in a community patio outside of Ben Springs. That means working with businesses that are interested in starting a business. I was the one that proposed a $50,000 fund from ARPA, the American Rescue Plan, so that businesses could take that money and invest that into their businesses so that that would turn into tenfold. So when the patio gets $10,000 to work on that patio, that is going to bring people downtown, and that $10,000 is going to be minuscule in comparison to how much revenue we could generate. Obviously, on the infrastructure side, the reason why I feel I'm capable of doing this job is because I've served as the chair of the Municipal Rates and Utilities Committees for the past couple of years. So I know exactly where the city is spending their money. We know exactly what the infrastructure projects that we need to have done in our city. And so the last one that we floated was a failure, and we all recognize that. And that was a failure on the part of our city and myself. I would take responsibility that we didn't market it properly. All of the projects that we do are for the benefit of you. I pay taxes just the same as you. I definitely don't want to pay more money on my water. I don't want to pay money on my sewer, etc. So that is huge. And then finally, the biggest thing to me is how do we make this happen? It's through a connected community. I talk about Brand Ranch out there, or Liberty Island. They're like islands in themselves. We need to have physically connected streets with tree-lined pathways that lead to our downtown so that people are incented and want to be a part of the community. Right now, it feels like we have these communities that are separate. I live in Trilogy. No, you don't live in Trilogy. You live in Rio Vista. And let's all get around that idea of being Rio Vista. So let's make physical pathways and pathways that lead to the downtown and safe passageway from the north to the south for our community. That's how we're going to come together, and that's how we're going to have a stronger economy.
Thank you. John, you're up. Would you like me to ask the question again? Would you like to hear the question again? Okay.
I'll stand and do the moderators. Sit on and make sure everybody can see me in the background. The most important issue I already said is the budget. If developers owe this town money, we need to go find it. We need to audit it, find it. I don't like the idea of a sales tax major going through, like feeling like maybe we're paying for the developer's free ride. I don't like that at all. I don't like, in fact, the idea that beyond what the sales tax could increase, there might be a lot more money sitting out there, and we could have done other things, or at least could if we pay attention to what I would call in my business accounts receivable. I would say the budget has to be balanced, and we have to spend money. That the issue I mentioned earlier about weeks ago was the branding. Got everybody against $100,000 for branding, and we're $1 million in the hole. Now they say it's $500,000. Well, that's because they haven't filled a couple positions. It really is $1 million if those positions were filled. So that's not a correct number. The key is what we really need here is infrastructure, and sadly, it's not glamorous. It's not the things that you're going to see out there that are like a new building or a new road. Maybe a roadway. Let's fix the roads for sure. Let's tie in the Northwest Sewer Plant. They're going out for bid, and I hope that they're going out to bid to multiple companies, because Veolia Water, if you look on the check register for last month, got a huge amount of money for each plant. And I asked somebody, is that the only company that can do this? Because I know they're statewide. They said, no, they need to go out to bid. You know, we also have city engineers that get a lot of money out of the city. Have they ever put out to bid? I don't know. But if you look at the check register for last month, it's north of $3 million. They want to build new police and fire stations. That sounds good, but we're not even close to getting to that point. If anything, you would repair a police station. I heard one number, it's $40,000 to fix a roof, and maybe there's mold. We'll remediate the roof, mold, and spend $40,000. Instead of millions and millions of dollars for new facilities, let's fix the roads that we're all driving on that are rough. Let's get the sewer plant tied in. Let's stick to the basics. You know, we could have some grandiose scheme, but we need to stick to the basics for right now and not go too fast. We don't need any more plans and services from agencies. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, John. So we're up for the next question. First on the next question. What personal skills or traits do you bring that would make you an effective mayor?
The number one skill that I bring is I started going to city council meetings and I could see it like handwriting on the wall that there's misspending. And I can also see that there's a lot of projects that need to be done in Rio Vista and they're not necessarily done in the right order. I would say, sorry, what's the question?
Personal skills.
Personal
and traits.
That's my number one skill and trait that I could bring. And another skill that I have is I don't like to sugarcoat anything. So a good skill that I can bring, and some people don't like this. They don't like it when I go to city council and start talking and get what I call passionate on an issue. Other people would call it unstable. I'm passionate about Rio Vista. My wife and I are passionate about Rio Vista. We've sunk a ton of money into this town, and it's very risky for us. And some people said, oh, in another meet and greet, you have a conflict of interest. No, I don't. I don't have a conflict of interest. I've already gone through the battle. The trait I have is I felt the planning commission roll out the red carpet for us. I felt the building department and the engineers yank it out 100 times. And my trait is when a new business comes here, I'm going to roll the red carpet out myself. I'm going to be there. I'm going to make sure that they get a pathway to get where they need to get. Not months and months and months, like 7 months to get an okay on a parking lot. That's insane. Right now, I've been waiting 4 weeks for simple answers on finishing the parking lot and opening it. We'll get back to you. The first email, 2 weeks. I showed them where they weren't right. Then the next email, I still haven't got it. The other 2 weeks. And they say at the end of the letter, well, we can't wait to see you open your business. That's not the way it should be done. As mayor, my skill will be, I'm going to be hands-on. I'm going to be on the ground. I'm going to be involved. There's somebody that wants to come into the business park right now. Planning Commission is putting them off several times. What are they actually doing that's more important than bringing a decent-sized business into the business park? I heard somebody else wanted to go in the old Herald building over here. They were going to make some kind of something like a pop chips or something like that. And they were going to actually manufacture it there and maybe have a little front end. Somebody said, no, we don't feel that's what we want to be down there. We want some retail or something. Look at that old Herald building. It's just sitting there empty. Thank you.
Okay. Edwin, you want me to repeat the question?
No, you're talking about personal traits. That's the candidate. So I'll start with this. I've been in this community and I've been passionate about our community for 27 years that we've owned our business. But I'll say this, is that when we first moved to town, my wife told me, she said, you know what? Everyone in this community knows each other. You might want to, in so many words, she said, you might want to just tone it down a little bit until you learn a little bit more. And I worked out of town. I didn't say anything. And I had ideas for our community from day one. I came from Berkeley. I lived in San Francisco. I lived in Richmond. I lived in probably 10 different cities in the Bay Area. So I came in, I believed I had all the answers to everything, and I absolutely did not. Because I needed to be a part of this community, and I need to learn the community. All the ones that I named in the opening statement, those are all friends of mine. And I could pick up the phone any time of day. I could talk to any one of the landowners that owns the waterfront property, that own any one of the businesses in town. I could pick up the phone and talk to them because I've worked with them. I've helped finance them. I've become friends with them. I've volunteered with them. So I'm a critical thinker. That's one of the reasons why I'm the candidate for you, because I look at every single issue with a critical mindset, and I don't turn a blind eye to any idea that's out there. I'm experienced. I've owned a business. I've owned a business for 27 years. I've owned 2 marketing agencies. I've been out there. I know how to manage staff. I know what people want. I'm amiable, I believe, maybe. I think people like me in general, and that's why I'm able to get things accomplished. I manage from a positive perspective. I don't manage from negativity, and that's my position. Thank you.
Okay, Edwin. First up, there's as well. What role do you see for the mayor in creating the annual budget, And then what role do you see for the mayor in honoring and following the budget?
Absolutely. So Jen Lee, she's won 12 years in a row, or not Jen Lee, but our city has won an audit award for the past 12 years. So our budget, from the perspective, it has nothing to do with spending, but in terms of the books being good, they are good. Now, how we spend our money, we have budget sessions this year for the first time. We actually met for a month and a half, even before we signed off on our final budget in June, when we closed out on that. And so we take a keen eye on every single line item, from whether we're going to hire a battalion chief to whether we're going to hire a rec director. And this is the reason why, when we realized we were in a budget crunch, we went back to our financials, and we looked and we asked staff to look at the numbers and see where can we cut. And then we offered some more solutions to that. Of course, there are things that you as a community have asked for and you want. For instance, you wanted 2 fire trucks, or 2 fire trucks in our city, because Liberty Island was growing and Trilogy was growing. So in 2021, our budget did go up. And it wasn't because we were trying to be fiscally irresponsible. It was because cannabis revenues at the time was generating roughly $800,000 for the city. Since that time, that revenue has dropped. We had no indication of how much it was going to drop by. As we all know, we were also in COVID. So COVID was a huge blow to the city. So when you think about costs, our revenues went up by 3.5% from 2021 to today, but yet inflation went up by roughly 13%. So these are the things that caught our budget off guard. We have a strong reserve. We're going to have a forecast out to have still $8 million in reserve in our general fund, and we have other funds as well. So when people get stuck on this budget deficit, they should also realize that we have funds for every single thing that's out there. I mean, so it's not that the general fund is 70-something% salaries, for instance. But we have other funds for other things. For instance, you're talking about the branding project. There's a $72,000 project, which translates for everyone in simple terms as money to our community, economic development. That is what branding is about. So that money is not actually coming from our general budget. That is coming from the business part fund that we have. That's coming from ARPA funds. So those types of, when you look at numbers and you say, well, that represents 10% of our budget, that represents 10% of that budget. So, I lost track of the question, so I can go on.
Okay, go ahead and repeat the question. Okay, what role do you see for the mayor in creating the annual budget? And then what role do you see for the mayor in honoring and following the budget?
That's actually very simple. The role of the mayor and the entire council should be to take what money we have and allocate it to things that are most important, and leave some other things aside, that might seem glamorous and exciting, we don't have. And then, of course, you have to watch where you're spending the money. What I feel in this city, what I see, and I'm a new company. A lot of people, I'm not a politician, so I don't know all the ins and outs of politics. I'm just watching it down there, and I can't take it anymore. You're looking at money being mismanaged, and they always talk about, like, for example, with Major K, we're going to get this committee, we're going to oversight it, and everything. We're going to make sure we spend it the right way. That doesn't really happen between all these funds down there. The general fund especially, money gets put in there, and I don't think anybody gets a newsletter on where it's spent on a regular basis. I haven't seen anything like that. I hear a lot of rumors about money being misspent. Some money comes in for certain things and gets used on other things. And the reality is, it's kind of like in today's world. I look at people, I have this simple thing I say these days with the inflation, which is insane. People are deciding to filling up the car with gas, buying food, or making the house a rent payment. That's the way it is, right? So when things get tight, like those three things that they need in their life, they need the fuel to get to work to earn the money. They need the food to feed their families so they can live. They need the house to live in. Those are pretty simple things. It's just like somebody in that position decided, you know what, we got $10,000 in the bank. Let's go to Vegas this week and blow all the money and come back next week and find out we can't buy food, we can't make the house payment. You know, those things are very simple, and I think people try to turn it into a very elaborate scheme when it's not. And I feel like people are trying to hide things when they turn it into an elaborate scheme. The money should be focused in this town on the number one things, which are infrastructure, which is lacking.
John, and you're up to the next one. Now, this is kind of a tough one. I'll say. Describe an ethical dilemma you have faced in the past and how you resolved it.
Well, something that comes to mind, I guess. I don't know why this pops into my head. I don't know if this qualifies, but I'm going to say it. I had a couple of employees long ago who I both, loved as people and employees, but they got into kind of a racial type of a problem. And I had to get them both in my office, and it was really hard because you got one guy accusing another guy of writing something about his race in the computer screen on the desk. And you got the other guy, amazingly, somewhat admitting it. I was shocked because the other guy was a really good guy, like an amateur boxer for real, and he was going to kill this guy. And I didn't want it to happen, of course, in my shop. I was scared of jumping in the middle of these gentlemen. And I knew them both for a very long time, and both of them were quite a bit older than me. So I sat them down, and all I did was simply bring to their attention that there's a lot of racism out there, and that one person probably didn't mean what the other, and by the end, it turned out through language barrier, the one who was almost kind of admitting he was doing it wasn't saying it to the other individual correctly. So when we all came and sat down and calmed down, by the end, those guys were friends, and we were all hugging, and everything was good. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin, would you like me to repeat?
I think I got it. It's described an ethical dilemma, correct? Yeah, so what comes to mind, I don't know if it's ethical, but it was a dilemma. I served on the planning commission for 7 years, and 4 years into it, I have to believe, somebody came before the commission and said they wanted to open a storage facility on our waterfront, on the north waterfront. And many of us were, we really did not like that idea. And we wanted to say, and some of us, I think a couple said, no, we're not going to do it. But at the end of the day, that is why we need to look at our general plan. That is why we need to look at our specific waterfront specific plan, because that is what we turn to as our Bible. We look at these municipal codes, we look at the land use, we look at landowners' rights when they buy a property. So when that property went up for sale, that was zoned for what they wanted to do, which was a storage facility. So on one side of me, I said, you know what, I don't want it. But on the other side, I said, our Bible is that general plan, the waterfront specific plan, and how we zone properties. So I gave the yes to that. And so these are the reasons why it's important to understand the plans that we put in place. When we talk about the general plan for years on end, it's not because we wanted to take 2 years to develop a general plan. It's because these types of plans are important when people come to us. So when developers come to Rio Vista and want to build a 10-story building that everyone else here does not want to see, we could go to our Bible or our general plan or our land uses, and we could say, no, that's not going to happen in our community. And so that we have those dilemmas, but the objective is to make things as airtight as possible, so we don't have to have those issues.
Thank you.
And
And
yes.
your next on this one. The current Solano County Orderly Growth Initiative sunsets in 2028. At that time, or whenever it returns to the voters for action, will you support the continuation of the Orderly Growth Initiative? And if not, why?
Thank you. That's a great question, because I've been thinking about this for literally a year now, right? All of us have been thinking about that. And so I'll start with the fact that I was always absolutely against the idea of a development in unincorporated areas. And I don't know what your reasons are, but my reason was simple. It would economically devastate the communities around them. From an economic perspective, people always are looking for the next shiny thing. Now, when they operate within cities like Rio Vista, if they started in Sassoon or Fairfield, they would have controls over them. So getting back to the actual question about whether I would support it, I support whatever that general plan in 2028 when it expires and they develop it. Again, we worked on our general plan, just wrapping it up. It took 2 years to do. I support what the community wants. So that's another ethical dilemma, right? If I wanted something, but the community wanted something else, I need to follow the community. I'm elected by you. The same thing with the Solano County general plan and the Orderly Growth Initiative. It's exactly the same thing. If the community came back now and said, we don't have any problem building on farmland now, well, that'd be an ethical dilemma for me, because I'm representing you, and if you said you wanted that, I would have to bow down to that general plan. I strongly believe in general plans, waterfront specific plans, all these plans that you, the people, have decided upon.
John, you want me to repeat the question?
No. So first off, with 2028, I want to be right there with Solano Together and the Solano Land Trust and whoever to try and reinstate the land use restrictions. I don't believe that should ever change. That goes back to the 1990s. They renewed it several times. And it is due to expire, and I believe they're working on renewing it. And I believe that land should stay just like it is. I was definitely spoke out endlessly at council meetings about being against California forever. Only one council member that I know actually could say in front of the public at the time there was pending ballot initiative that they were against it. And there was a lot of silence up there. And if I was on that council, I would have been silent. And I was really sad to see Solano Together's first event. And you have mayors and council and ex-mayors and ex-council of neighboring cities there with our higher up state elected and county elected officials speaking against it. And nobody from our city council was there. I thought that was pretty sad, because I'm pretty sure the event was in Rio Vista. I didn't like how the city attorney supposedly told everybody not to talk, and that's why they wouldn't talk. But actually they could, because it wasn't a ballot initiative, and in my mind, it never became a ballot initiative. Solano County rejected it. They want more reports. They're gonna come back in a couple of years or sooner. In a couple of years, they might be on the ballot again if they come up with some environmental reports that say they could double the size of the county right next to us, which I highly doubt they'll be able to do that. What if they only want to do 200,000 people instead of 400? That's still insanity. So I'm definitely a person who's against, in this city, no more large-scale development unless somebody's developing one little lot somewhere, until the roads and bridges can support it. I was almost late to this based on another huge backup, probably a bridge up. We need to support the land use restrictions, and we need to worry about bringing businesses here, not more houses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, John. And you get the first shot at the next question. What plans would you initiate and support to attract new businesses to Rio Vista?
I think I touched on that earlier, an economic development director for sure. This city used to have one, from what I understood, and that person was passionate about going out and trying to attract new businesses. So the plan would be to go seek out people, and the plan would be to reform the building department, which is, in my opinion, a complete failure. They don't know how to show a new business a clear pathway of how to open up in an expeditious manner. They don't even have a clue. Like when I'm right now asking, just give me the details. What do I need to finish this parking lot? How long should that take a city official to say on the parking lot? Well, you need to do this, this, and this. That should be something that I should get an answer from in like 24 hours or at least within a week. Clear, concise. This is what we're going to do. So I support not necessarily a specific plan. I'm not big on the word plans. It would get into, I hate when in city council people are saying, well, we need direction. Well, what about from your brain? I mean, it's pretty easy to know that if a new business comes here, especially right now, somebody wanted to go into the business park and build like a large office type building and have some jobs here, we should want that. The business park is greatly empty. There's one building in there, a new one, then you bring the next person in. Now there's another new building there. And they're like, oh wow, this place has got something going on. All of the discouraged businesses of the past that the city is responsible for hurt this community economically. The first people that wanted to renovate the hotel were 15 years ago, and they discouraged them. And imagine if they would have paved them the path back then, what would the downtown be like? Some of those empty storefronts would have stores because there'd be people coming to stay there at the hotel. So the reality is, I don't want a fancy plan. I don't want to hire an agency to figure it out. Let's just use common sense and logic. Somebody comes in, show them the path, make it clear, and welcome them. Don't make them feel like you don't want them there. Like a city employee told me in my own gym, you'll get run out of town. Well, maybe yes, maybe no.
Okay. Would you like me to repeat the question?
No, I think I got it. Plans initiated attracting businesses. Right. So again, we need to start up here. It's economic development, and to have economic development, you need to have a plan. So willy-nilly isn't the solution. And so when we talk about branding programs, we're talking about what developers want to see when they come into a community. When I met with Glenn Martin, who's doing the Brand Ranch project, that was 4 or 5 years ago now. I spoke with him, and he said, I said, what can we do to make our city better? How can we attract businesses to our community? He says, I need to know the direction that you want for your city. Do you want strip malls in your town? I don't think so. We could open our arms to anything if you wanted to take the willy-nilly route, right? But we need to have a plan. We need to have a vision for what our community is, so that developers know what we want to have, so that when they do something on the waterfront, they recognize that we are a Point River town, and that's exactly what we want to stay. They need to see the plan. So in 2018, I hosted a economic development forum, and I called together people from Oakley, from Brentwood, from Winters, and I asked them as well, what economic development, how do we spawn economic development in our community? And I'm not going to go into all the details of that, but the bottom line to what I'm saying is that you need to have a plan, and you need to reach out to others, and that's why I'm the candidate that's going to reach out to other communities and find out what they did to make them successful. I don't just want to be one voice up on city council. In fact, I am only one voice on city council. Even if I'm the mayor, there are 4 other people that vote along with me. But the more data we have and the more strategically we think, the better our city's going to be.
Okay, thank you. And you're up for the next one. We'll get this rhythm
Yeah,
down.
we'll get it down. We'll get it down, Marty. Stay awake.
Okay. What role do you see for the mayor in making sure the airport is managed effectively?
Great question. So I've been thinking about this a lot because, again, I am not the expert on airports, as I am not the expert on a lot of different things. The mayor, you as a leader in your businesses, you think about the CEO of GE. Do you think he knows how to do electrical work? No, he absolutely does not know how to do that. He knows how to lead. He knows how to set strategic direction. So we have commissions that we have here in town, and one of them is our airport commission. I'm going to be meeting with Sue Clark, who is not on that airport commission right now, but she has ideas. I'll meet with her, but I think she's here. I could tell her right now that what's going to happen is I'm going to take her ideas. I'm going to take it to our airport commission, who are the experts in this area, and I'm going to take their advice. So when we have a Parks and Rec commission, or we have the planning commission, those are the tools that the mayor uses to make good decisions. We don't just pull things out, look at our packet and say, hey, we're going to vote for this. We go to our commissions to get their professional advice, and that's what we implement. So right now we're considering taking FBO back out to bid for the airport. That needs to go to the airport commission. I don't need to see it right now. I want it to go to the airport commission. When things on land use come up, where do we go? We go to our planning commission for their advice. So when it comes before our desk or before the council dais, we have the information we need to make the right decisions for you.
Thank you. John? Do you want to hear the question again?
So I had the pleasure of going to Airport Day and having a booth there. I was actually very impressed with the size of the airport. I mean, when you look on the map compared to the city of Rio Vista, it is a large piece there. And it was exciting to see all the small planes taking off and landing there. And I told somebody in another meet and greet, I said, it's not out of the realm of imagination that someday, if we turn this town into a really great destination town, like I believe it can be, then you wouldn't have like Hollywood type people coming up here. I mean, you have an airport right here in Rio Vista. I mean, how many small towns have an airport like that? I would say that makes us very, very unique. And I'm not going to say any name, but I've talked to people, and I'm going to be touring the airport soon to get a better idea from somebody who has a really good idea what's going on, been around it a long time. And I'll tell you what, from what I've heard, it's not a lot different than what I experienced downtown opening businesses. They've harassed people that have had businesses out there. They've harassed pilots. I saw some depositions between the building department and the current city manager where they were actually talking about $5 and $8 transient plane parking fees. And you've got like multiple city employees there in these long transcripts, and they're questioning somebody. And when did you park the plane? When did you lock the gate? And this was over $5 and $8 parking fees. And I was like, is this really going on? Is there this level of harassment going on everywhere like I feel? This town definitely has a thing where you've got two sides of people to everything, just about like the Democrats and Republicans, feels like split down the middle, and people have animosity towards other people. But it should be, when it comes to the city, that we're all worried about the city. When we're talking about the youth, we're worried about the youth. When we're talking about keeping the airport and making it profitable and making it a place people want to land, we should all be on that same page together. So what I would do is like every other thing I would do, I want to find out more about the airport, find out if it's profitable, find out how to make it more profitable, find out how to make it more enjoyable, find out how to get more businesses there at the airport if there's vacancies. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, you're up. Share your thoughts on funding a consolidation of the two sewer systems, and who should pay the financial burden?
Well, potentially, we missed who should have paid the financial burden. And it was probably Shea Holmes. And potentially, I don't know if the money, if they're ever gonna look at it down at City Hall, maybe they can still get them to help out with that. But I did notice, recently, they're talking about bond issues at City Hall, about 5 different bonds. They had a presentation last council meeting, very unattended. Oh, well, we do this kind of bond for an improvement like the sewer or like a new police and fire. This kind takes a 2/3 voter approval. This one, oh, this one's good, the city manager said, because it just takes a city council vote. And I'm thinking, are they serious? They're actually priming us for some more bond type of issues right after every single rate is increased and there's a sales tax measure on the ballot right now. I was shocked that they were presenting that. That's just totally crazy. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin? Do you want to hear the question again?
No, it's about consolidation of the plants, which I absolutely support. And the reason why I support it is because I've taken tours of both of our plants. I've spoken to the plant managers at these locations. And so this has been going on for quite some time. And I think you're going to find out if I become mayor that I'm one guy that does not kick the can down the road. So there are tough decisions that we have to make. And I, like you, am literally paying the same fees that you're paying. So it takes a lot of, we really look at the issues tightly. I mean, when we started the Municipal Rates and Utilities Committee, or I started chairing it a little over a year ago, I fought to have our former city manager to be on that committee. And the reason being, the reason why I wanted him on that committee was because he knows the other side. I work on the outside looking in at the city management team. He was the city manager, so he knows all the technicalities of what is needed. So he asks the most tough questions on that committee every single month that we meet. So we know what the issues are. Now, having said that, of course, it comes with a big price tag. And so when we go through this 218 process that many of you may have heard of, it's painful. And we do reckon, and when we come up with the numbers, we're basing it off of what we have today. So a fee may go up by X amount, but the reason why it's going to go up by X amount is because we haven't gone out and we haven't got other funding sources yet. So those funding sources may actually offset with whatever those numbers are. So we are always very aware of what the consumer, what you're paying. We have empathy for people that are on fixed incomes. I live in a 55+ community now, so I fully understand that. So we're taking extra care to look at the budgets and understand that when we're doing these projects and we're looking at our infrastructure project that we're doing in the city, we continue to cut them down. I mean, we do absolutely the bare minimum. When COVID came upon us and inflation shot up, we put on the shelf, and I don't know the exact number, but we probably put 7 different projects on the shelf because we weren't willing to pay those prices and then end up passing it on to you. So just be aware that when we make decisions, we've gone through a very thoughtful process, and we understand the importance because we know that you don't want to have failed infrastructure under our city.
Thank you. So you can stay standing.
Still not with the program, sorry.
How will you effectively communicate with residents about issues that are seen to be divisive?
Great. Another great question because I've given a lot of thought to this. I hate using the word, about being transparent. Everyone says transparency is important. I'm going to be the transparency candidate. But the reality is our city has been very transparent. Our assistant city manager every single week puts out a report on every single meeting that we produce that is going on in the coming weeks and gives a summary of the things that we have worked on. And then as well, every single council meeting, every month we have a monthly report that details every single spend that we have had. Our budget is sitting on the table at City Hall, and so there's a lot of transparency going on there. I also believe that you need to reach people because I come from a marketing agency background, and I believe you need to reach people where they are. So if you guys don't want to hang out at City Hall, we need to find ways of getting that information to you. I'm saying that on my Facebook page, I say, hey, there's a link to our website where you can get a weekly report on what's going on. But I also believe on my Facebook page, I post whenever there's a big issue going on in our community. I do a little summary of it. And if I were to become mayor, then I would post that information to the Beacon. So maybe you have to get on Twitter one of these days. I'm fighting that, but fortunately we're a 55 plus community, so I doubt that's really going to be a case. But Facebook, Beacon, City Hall, website, we do have forms for getting information out to you. And then of course I'm always open. I publish my phone number everywhere. I would rather people call me up directly versus starting to spin up stories on Nextdoor and on Facebook. So I'm open to ideas.
Thank you. John, would you like to hear the question again?
Sure.
How will you effectively communicate with residents about issues that are seen to be divisive?
I would say communication with the citizens is key. The city themselves, when they hired the agency about the 0.5%, 3/4, 1% sales tax, the only thing that presenter said negative that night about the city was, you're doing a terrible job about communicating with your citizens because 60% of people I polled didn't know there was a deficit at all. I believe the city website is not enough. I believe the Beacon is not enough, and I believe social media is very hit and miss. In Martinez, where we moved from, they have a bi-monthly newsletter that comes out in the mail. It's no secret. I'm in the printing business. I figured it out. Rio Vista can mail one out. Postage in a 4-page newsletter with graphs and what they're spending money on to every home for about $2,500. Every other month, that would be about $15,000 a year. Compared to the $3 million they spent just last month, that's not a lot of money. And the citizens should be informed. And I also don't like, and I'd like this to change regardless if I'm elected, when I'm on that check register, there's hyperlinks for the invoices, but you can't open them up. And why is that? You know, engineers, $80,000 here, and this person, $50,000. The invoice links are right there, but we can't open them. So why would a transparent city not have those links there? If you see a giant check that was written, and the invoice is definitely linked on their computer, the blue link is there, but we can't open it. That's not being transparent. Also, I realized in reading city council agendas, you get the agenda when you walk in the door, or you can look it up online. And it's just a couple of pages, 2 or 3, of what we're looking at tonight. But when you click in those hyperlinks on there, you're going to see a whole lot more. You're going to see 30, 40, 50-page documents, just like when the state writes legislature. You go to vote, and there's this little tiny paragraph, but somehow they have a Bible-sized document behind that with a lot of things hidden. And this city should be super transparent, and they're not. And I would just want to verbally communicate. I'm one that believes good, bad, or ugly. Just tell it how it is and let everybody know how it is. And then we can all decide how we're going to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of you are up. If elected, how would you pick your staff? What qualities would you find to be most important in your choices?
For me, staff would definitely be an issue. Like what I experienced in the building department, I want staff in that building department that, like I said, are going to pave the way for people, treat them right, get back to them fast. City manager type of stuff, we want to have somebody that's fiscally responsible. They're not just keep proposing, you want to spend some more money, every meeting, how about this? Let's one that comes to mind. Maybe I single-handedly stopped it that night because I was up there saying, you're in the hole, even though they went for branding after that. But this one was to get a design for a new police and fire station and go out and find which of 3 sites that we might do it on, knowing that they can't afford it. And there was actually a local architect who went out once with a police and a fireman, the chiefs of both, and they had lunch one day, And they went around and already found the site a year or two ago. The police and fire chiefs would obviously be the people who would know the best where they would want it logistically for Trilogy and the Core. And you don't need, they were gonna spend $50,000 that night to get another report. And it's not fair, that this keeps going on. Thank you.
Thank you. And you want to hit the question?
Nope, I got it. You were talking about picking staff.
Yes.
And so, first of all, to clarify again, as a mayor, the staff that you pick is our city manager, and I already said it earlier, but we picked a fiscally sound, a fiscally responsible city manager. The other things that I sat down when we first met her and when we interviewed her was about culture. We felt there was a culture challenge within City Hall, and she went in, and we had heard it from the previous city managers. They had said that there's some things that need to be resolved. And so those are the things we were looking for, culture change, so that everyone was on board on the same mission. I continue to push the whole idea that everyone in City Hall recognizes that they are your employees, right? And so when we talk about change in our city, we need, every single one of staff needs to be customer service oriented. And by changing the culture to that, I think everything else falls from there. Simple as that.
Good, thank you. Well, at this time, I need to take a brief break to confer with my team.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
Take that seat over there.
Huh?
Take that seat. Yeah, oh, God, if lives here long enough.
You know, again, there is a significant difference.
Conference is open.
Anything? You're not a real guy. I'm already trying that. Sorry, what?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Stand, this is my table, that's my table right there.
Just want to make sure you need to sit down. Right. I see a special baby that at the point. Yeah, I'm out.
It's a big deal.
I'll go check. So how?
If you do, fine, if you don't.
You don't like tickets?
Some would do this consolidate. Some were not appropriate from the recording levels. Statement.
I just don't want to
But,
hurt it.
Thank
you.
I will see you. No, how would you spend the 1% of the proposed 1% sales tax?
Okay, so first of all, we already know that there's a budget deficit, so we're gonna close it again. We brought that number down to roughly $500,000, and we're on with that. And so salary, just a certain, and I'll get salary increases because people say, why didn't we salary increases? We need to stay safe.
Thank you, sir. I will.
Other increases because we're not gonna have the right staff.
Thanks.
And so that is mandatory. Having said that, even if that number had gone up to $1 million, which it's not, we should have each year roughly $700,000 in benefit to the community. And one of the things that council and certainly I was strong on is that we need to have an oversight committee, just like the municipal rates and utilities committee, when we rate increases. We too say there needs to be an oversight committee, not an oversight committee of me and some other council members and city managers sitting there, but an oversight committee that you and maybe a couple of council members, so that you are actually the ones making the decision on where those funds are going. So if we had 700,000, and I'm making it up for easy math, if we had 700,000, it costs roughly $1 million a mile to fix a road, to repave a complete road. So there needs to be a prioritization. So if you look, the city has, and we've scanned every single road in all of Rio Vista. So when you say, hey, my road is bad, we know your road is bad, and we know the exact condition, whether you live on Delta or whether you live on the road going out to Vineyard Bluffs. We know the condition of the roads, and they're all ranked. So I know that that's a priority, so that would be one of the areas that's spent on. When we talk about police stations and whatnot, you think people say, well, the development fees should pay for that police station. Well, that police station is based on growth of the city, and if we don't have that, then we have to then the police station, we have to come up with new solutions around that. So now I completely lost my thought.
Good. Thank you. John, would you like to hear the question again?
So I'm one of those people that just doesn't accept the status quo. And the status quo in government is we're in a deficit, we're going to raise some wages, we're going to increase some taxes, and we're going to end up with X at the end. My dad taught me to grow within what you already have. We already have a budget. We have money being spent unwisely. So to answer that question, if I'm mayor and this tax happens to pass, I don't intend to just have 700,000 of it to go to something. I intend to have the entire thing and then some, because we're going to make the city more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. So, the next question. This is about the city's reserve funding, and particularly whether that reserve should be used for the water treatment system revisions that are needed, and whether, and if it's not for that, what would you see the reserves going towards sometime in the future?
I feel that when I say budget's number one, we straighten it out. Number two is infrastructure. The number one thing on the infrastructure is the least appealing thing. It is the sewers. We're not going to see anything on the surface. You know, the daily citizens, we're not going to see it. But when I saw that check register, what's being spent on the beach plant, and then when I heard out recently, and here's another one, the city's so transparent. How many people know there was discharges into the river recently, and the city was fined? And I thought about how close it is to Sandy Beach. Are they letting us know that there's a discharge out there? I don't think so. I don't think anybody wants to talk about that. And if Shea Holmes was supposed to tie it in, and officials in this city let that go, we can't go back and change that now. But obviously that means it should have been done a long time ago. And it could have been done on somebody else's dime. But most likely, just like your old car, you keep dumping money into it, You're better just going out and buying a brand new car, for sure. And the Northwest plant evidently has a major capacity to handle all of our needs. So that should be the number one thing that should be done with the reserve funds right now. Not building a new police and fire station. We build this new police and fire station. It's great. They're happy. The city has their shining jewel, but we're still dumping into the river, and we're spending too much on the facilities. That's not correct. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin?
Yeah, so our city has around $8 million in general fund in reserves. And those funds, for many of you, would seem like a huge amount of money. It represents 90-something% of our budget. And so it is a large number. But the reality is, unlike other cities, many cities have different funds for different things. They may have a fund that is to finance your police department, for instance. We don't have that. So when we talk about we're building a new police department, we have to think about how that fund is going to be impacted. There's a clarification I think there's this rumor spread around that there's $24 million that's owed to us by shade developers. And that is absolute craziness, actually. I mean, I have to state it just the way it is. When you go into a developer agreement, that is a contract. Just like when you buy your home, you sign a contract on the home. Municipal code in the city can't come to your home and say all of a sudden that, you're going to spend $500,000 on your home. You need to now pay $650,000 on your home. That is a binding contract. So when developers, and right now it's happening, Brand Ranch is their development agreement expired recently. And so we're renegotiating with them. So when you talk about fees and increased fees, yes, that developer, we are going to ask for more from them. So, but we can't go back 10, 20 years when these development agreements are formed and say, oh, by the way, everyone, we're changing the rules of the game. Your contract is invalid. So just want to straighten that out. All of these funds, when you talk about the consolidation and there's $8 million in reserve, again, we're talking about different funds. We have a water fund. We have different funds for the different infrastructure projects that we have. That reserves, we need to keep a strong reserve because those reserves are used in our city when a water main breaks and we need to go out there and pay for it and we don't have any money. For instance, I'll give you a perfect example. The storm drain fee, which was paid at 45 cents a month for years, that's called kicking the can down the road. That fee should have increased. And that's why you were all upset and said, I'm not voting for it. But the reality is we don't have any money to fix our storm drains now. And so when there is a major break in one of our lines, that's what we need to do. We need to go to our general fund. That is not what we want to use our general fund for. Those reserves are when we have a catastrophic event that happens within our city and we need to fix it.
Thank you. And you're up for next question. This question has to do with the roads. As mayor, what would you plan to do and to lead toward in maintaining and repairing the roads that are being damaged by many big trucks and additional vehicles?
Yes, thank you. So that's a multi-part question because trucks are one thing and we all get frustrated because our roads get clogged by trucks at 5-ton trucks. Just this week, we went out and we started posting signs out on many of our streets to not allow 5-ton trucks on our interior streets. That's one way to solve part of the problem. Of course, we need to have enforcement from law enforcement to make sure that that does not happen. So that's another issue. But our roads, as I mentioned, cost $1 million roughly. This is from supervisor told me this, $1 million a mile. So we have to prioritize the roads that we're working on. The different types of road repairs. There's road repairs that everyone's frustrated from Church Street down to the riverfront if the road is torn apart. We're all frustrated by it. I rode a scooter on it, so you can imagine me rattling down the road over there. So I fully get it. But that road has reached such a condition that we would have to completely tear the road surface out and redo it. The reason why the road was repaired from Church up to Liberty Island was because the road had not fallen to such disrepair that we couldn't do what they call, I believe, a slurry seal on it. And that was done in partnership with the county. So when we're working on the roads, we're always looking for money to figure out how to repair those roads. And the county has money, the state has money, the gas tax was inefficient to repair our roads, so we have to look for other solutions. So we're continually, that's like a number one priority in the city, always looking for new funding sources to make that happen. But that is, and then again, at the 1% sales tax initiative, that would provide some money to do some basic repairs to that infrastructure.
Thank you. John, do you want me to repeat the question?
Okay, roads are definitely one of the things I've spoken about many times. I look at small roads just downtown, like 6th Street between Montezuma and Main, one block up from where our bed and breakfasts are going to be. That street, if you drive on it, it's unbelievably bad. Everything in the core that's not Main Street, obviously they've got Main Street dolled up. We get to hear that street sweeper on whatever day they come out at the crack of dawn, and the weed blowers and everything. Let's make Main Street look nice. But I would say what I would do indirectly, again, trying to save money. I can't imagine with all the reports that have been ordered in agencies in the last year and a half, that could have been $1 million for a mile of roads right there. And we could feel it. Would you rather have some big files of paperwork, or would you rather see a mile of roads? And I would say the city, I heard they spent a huge amount of money on that street sweeper. I could see our public works actually being able to repair some of these roads, as opposed in certain cases. You need a higher end contractor in certain cases, but like places like when you go to Hawaii on some of their back roads, and you see these guys out there every day filling potholes. At least you saw that in Oakland. If you saw it on the news, there was like a gang of good neighbors running around in the middle of the night filling potholes because everybody's getting flat tires. And in the city, that's a typical city thing. Let's harass those guys who are trying to help out everybody. Let's harass them. We should probably be fixing some of our own potholes with our own internal people right here, and I don't see any progress. All I hear out of City Hall is plans, and you did this, and 10 years ago they had the RUDAT plan, and now they've got the new general plan. Well, here's a question for all. What have you seen? Anybody who's been here for the last 10 years, what major improvements have you seen that weren't done by RioVision? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. And the next question turns to issues around our youth. And this question asks, please clarify from your perspective why the youth center closed and where they are moving. And to address how you, as mayor, work to provide youth activities that are appropriate for all of you.
So the youth center, again, is something I've spoken out many times. And this is a side I want to clarify. This has nothing to do, this part I'm about to say has nothing to do with whether or not I'm elected mayor. About 6 months ago, I was approached by Vista Youth Center Services who saw the handwriting on the wall that council and whoever had wanted to repurpose that building down there. So there was an incident, they said, one council member did the Freudian slip and said, the reason we're kicking out the youth center, you could just go back to the council, the meeting, and then everybody back, well, no, we're not kicking them out. It was definitely a forced out type of a thing, but they knew that was coming. They could feel it. So when we bought the hotel, somehow the city gave the old youth center built in the 40s by the Lions to the previous owner of the hotel to tear it down and make a parking lot. There was even word that it was condemned. Today I just heard a documentation, a very sound building. They probably did something paperwork to be able to give it away. Well, I told this Rio Vista Youth Services 6 months ago that I would like to rent that for like $1 a month lease for a super long time, and potentially them and the Lions get back together, and we are going to have a Lions presentation, and we're going to try to run that youth center without any city involvement, so it can actually live on instead of going through different council budgets and we've got this problem and that problem, whose personal opinion about it. So the youth, that's what I'm going to personally do. It doesn't have to do with being there. And Parks and Rec, I don't know a lot about it. I won't lie, but I do hear a lot of people say there's not a lot of action in Parks and Rec. And I did like that one council member, when I spoke this night about the youth center, just pleading to not do that to them right now, because school was just starting, because we have a plan to renovate the old youth center with private money. I'm going to be, my wife and I, the first donors of probably $10,000 toward the renovations, and we're going to try to get other venture donors and the whole community together down to $10 and $20 people, so the community, if we want to make it with the community events like concerts and plays and things like that, which could bring trilogy people down to do acting classes with the kids and tie the community and make it support itself. So we don't have to deal with this type of bureaucracy, and the fact that people don't like each other in the youth center is cut down, because that's really what that came down to. So in the end, when I grew up, and I said this in a previous meeting, I was used to things being around, the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, pools that the city actually ran themselves. They didn't try to get a swim team to run it for a partial season. The pools in the inner cities that I know, El Cerrito, Albany, and Richmond, are run by the city. They have thriving programs. So I would say, I would make sure Parks and Rec is doing a good job, and let's get the city to actually do something for the kids that can't afford a more expensive program. Thank you.
Thank you. Edwin, would you like to hear the question then?
Sure, I'll hear it one more time, make sure I get it right.
Yeah, please clarify from your perspective why the youth center closed and where they are moving. And how will you as mayor work to provide youth activities that are appropriate for all ages?
Okay, I'll start from the top. There's this misconception that the city, quote, kicked out the youth center from the youth hall. That building has two spaces within it, and the youth center is operated in one. And we were simply looking at another, the larger of the two spaces to use for groups like Seropolis, Rotary, other youth groups like the Boy Scouts. They had complained about they were not able to use that youth center, not the youth center, but the community hall. So we were looking at it as an opportunity to repurpose that space. With regards to being kicked out, it was not being kicked out. We literally, there was an incident reported to our police department. A video was shown of a child that was being beaten, and as a result of that, our city had to take action on that. Now, since that time, that parent came back and said, hey, look, that's, a false alarm, it didn't happen. But as a city, and anyone that has ever owned a business, you fully recognize that if an incident occurs, that you need to take some sort of action. So the actions that we took, and they were at the request of me as well, I'll take responsibility for this. As a cross-country coach, I recognize that there are courses that you need to take, and you need to understand if you're going to be around children. You need to know about sexual assault. You need to be a mandated reporter. There are probably 10 different courses that I took that took me a week to do. And did I fight them at the beginning? Yes, I did. But the reality is those courses are absolutely important to run a effective community center or a youth activities. My girls grew up in this town from the time they were little girls, and there were plenty of activities for them. I think the weakness that our city may have, and this is not on City Hall, this is just on our city in general, we have youth programs at our churches. We have youth programs at the library. I don't know if you've ever seen that list. There's a huge number of them. So our community provides a lot of youth services. Can we do better? Yes, we can. Can we do it with more money? Yes, we need more money. That pool that keeps getting mentioned, that pool is built by our community. It's built by our community because we're a small community, and that's what we do as a small community. People step up when they see a void and they fill it. The city is there to deal with all that stuff underneath that is not very sexy, and we don't want to even know about. So when you think about the exciting things that happen within our city, they are going to be coming from the community. That's why we did the harvest table. That's why we're doing the fall festival. We're doing fall festival because we don't want the city to have to pay for things like that, because we know the city is always going to be challenged with funds. We're a small town, don't have the economies of scale that larger cities have. We came here so that because we wanted a small community, and what comes with it is that we need to participate in our community.
Okay, so your question, I'll begin. It has to do with some of your background. Please describe what professional management or leadership training you have completed? And what things do you feel you still need to do?
So I'll start all the way from college. I was business. I was graduated here in San Francisco State in the business department with business degree in marketing and advertising. I went on to work with technology companies that took on senior roles as a creative service manager. So when I talk about brand, I understand it. I went on to start doing a downturn in the economy. I went on to start 2 marketing organizations with business partners. One of them ended up being bought by a publicly held company where I was a VP of marketing there. Then I went on to another company, which we managed to sell after 7 years in operation. I became the CEO of that company. So I understand management. When you talk about what can I do better, it's always the same thing, right? It's always listening to your constituents, always understanding what you want, and always understanding that I'm not going to have the answers to everything. I'm the leader, but I'm looking for the experts around me to guide me as I navigate being mayor of the city.
Thank you. John, would you like to hear the question again?
Sure.
From your past, what professional management or leadership training have you completed? And what do you feel you still need to learn?
So mine came from, like, I guess in a way, the school of hard knocks, like falling down and getting up. I've worked in the same industry since I was 6 years old. My parents have both passed away, so nobody could call the child labor people I'm now. But I have a vast experience in that industry. And when I went into my own business, my parents separated, and I went to work for my brother for a while, and he kind of burned me on being partners. And I was just out of high school, and then I went back to work for my mother, who ended up taking over the company my parents owned together for a quarter century. And I worked with her for 5 years. So that's where I went from production into like running her shop. And it was actually much why I'm running for mayor. My dad was gone, and my mom brought in a lot of these failed business owner types. And the shop was nothing like I remembered as a kid. And I kind of forced my way right to the front seat to get it back to what I knew as a child. But I did have the advantage at that time. My mother was running the business. She had the real headaches. She had to write the checks. You know, it's one thing to run something, but when you write the checks and you're worried about income and you don't have enough, that's not a fun position to be in. So I broke away from her to start my own business. And a couple years later, ended up subsequently buying her company out. And I grew really fast in the first 2 years. Like, it was just me and one employee and my wife. And then we had a second employee in the third. That was our first year. The second year, we filled our first little rental space with equipment, and we were up to about 10 people. Then I bought my mother's shop, and we went from 10 to 25 people in under 90 days. And we were trying to run 2 different locations as we moved and merged, and it was a nightmare. It was a bloodbath financially, and I had to figure out how to get through it. And then not long after that, we had the dot-com bust in the Bay Area. And that was devastating. Printers had grown 1, 2, 3, 4 locations. They're vaporizing down to 0. We made it through that. 08 and 09, the mortgage crisis was a lot worse than that. All of my major competition went away. Companies, 50-year companies in the same family, gone. And I made it through that. And then COVID was a complete devastation of everything printing other than wine. People were buying a lot of wine. That year was like we died 100 times, but by the end of 2020, we came back out of it. So my experience is just natural. It's not college. I went to a high school called St. Mary's College High School, but that's only because they used to be part of St. Mary's College a long time ago. But I value that education I got there very much. And it wasn't business training, but part of what made me who I am. What I need to work on is to just keep being more and more and more fiscally responsible. That's the objective of the person on top. Thank you.
Okay, so John, up for the next. The next question has to do with vacant storefronts in downtown. And the question basically is, what can be done to help with cracked sidewalks, with insect problems, issues, and with other struggles that existing businesses have?
What's the part about sidewalks and
Well, is that there's it's a question on building codes, sidewalks, air conditioning and heating problems, insect issues.
Yeah.
Vacant. Basically, I think vacant storefronts, what contributes to that?
Right, vacant storefronts contribute to what I've been saying tonight, they need to be friendly to businesses, they need to pay. People always in this town will come up and say, we want this here, we want that here, we want another one of this or that, another grocery store, we want Starbucks, we want Walmart, you know. We couldn't get Baskin Robbins to come here because we have Gunther's, thank God, because they're temporary. But the Baskin Robbins won't go to a city under 40,000. Think of how when I grew up, it wasn't that way. Baskin Robbins in small little towns, and now they're like a big, arrogant, worldwide company who won't come here. And that's why we can't get a Walmart, and that's why we have trouble getting, you know, you're not going to have Safeway, you're not, you know, hospital would be something we need here. But vacant storefronts, you can't force businesses to come. You know, there's nothing the city council could do other than make sure there's good economic development going on by having a dedicated person out there trying to find new business people for us. That's the way to do it. As far as cracked sidewalks, there is one building that surprises me on the south side of Main Street. I'm not going to say the building, but a new tenant just moved in, and I think kids go in there. There's a mold smell that's been there the whole 4 or 5 years we've lived in this town, if you walk by that building. So I doubt there's a chance that somebody else from the city hasn't smelled the same smell. And how do you fix that? You actually do something about it. And the sidewalk ordinance is another terrible thing in the city. They put it on all of the residents for anything adjacent to their property. And the liability. That was done in 2018 under the current mayor. And this is what I don't like about it. They turned terrible sidewalks over to people that were in terrible disrepair. The city should have fixed those before you give it to a homeowner and say, keep it in good repair, because the day before that was finalized on a vote, it was the city's responsibility. And they just threw it on the citizens. So the city, beyond fixing regular roads, should actually take some accountability. Not talking about slightly marginal sidewalks, ones that are completely cracked, have up and down several inches. Those the city should definitely enforce it if it's the landowner, but if the city turned it over to them in that exact same shape, the city should take some responsibility. Thank you.
I think I follow the question. And you talked about blighted storefronts or vacant storefronts, and that's obviously been a concern as being in RioVision 1. I was one of the founders of that organization, being a member of the Chamber of Commerce, being a member of the Downtown Association on their board. We've talked on numerous occasions about different solutions we could do. People have talked to me about having a vacancy tax so that these business owners that are absentee landowners that live somewhere else and just basically are using their property for a tax benefit. We've looked at that, but then we've also had a lot of pushback from people for putting in place policies like that. So it is not an easy solution. You're hurting one and then helping another person. That's why one of the reasons why the Downtown Association, when we just started 2 years ago, we decided to, hey, let's clean our sidewalks. That doesn't obviously repair a sidewalk, but we said, hey, we're going to take our own power washers, we're going to get the community together, and one day we plugged them in and we started cleaning our sidewalks, peeling the gum off the sidewalks. Tammy Mitchell went and actually hired a window cleaner to go around and clean the windows. Some of the owners actually didn't like that to happen. That's fine. But the bottom line is, as a community, we come together when we realize that there aren't the funds to do certain things. We want to repair all roads. That whole, the sidewalk repair thing was before council, I think, I want to say this is well over 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So and the city does take responsibility when there are things that go wrong. If a city tree forced up the sidewalk, there have been cases where we've repaired it. There have been cases where there's been a water main break and the sidewalk is buckled. We've come in and done it. Can we do better as a city? Of course. And as a mayor, that's what prioritization is about. That is when we have an initiative or we have a potential rate increase. That's why we want to have these oversight committees, that so you know that your money is being spent exactly where you want it spent. I think people confuse local municipalities as being the federal government or the state government, where you pay into the gas tax and then you think our roads are going to be repaired. That gas tax was put there, and the reason why it was set at the rate that it was so it would get passed. It wasn't put in place so that all of our roads would be repaired. So we just have to I'm the pragmatic guy. So I just look for ways of being realistic with the resources that we have to make the repairs that we have. But understand this, it's going to be, and me as mayor, if you don't want to do anything, then it's not going to be a good thing for me, because I believe that our community is stronger with all of you participating in the process, 1, and 2, in helping out. I mean, that's why we have something like to the tune of 29 different service organizations in our community, because we care so much about our community. So we can't put all the responsibility on our city. We need to all take responsibility.
Thank you. And you're up for the next question.
Yes. Sorry.
This has to do with tourism. And what role do you feel the mayor might play in developing Rio Vista as a tourist destination?
Perfect question, because I've been thinking about this for 27 years now. But like I said, I want to first know the feedback of our own community before I started blabbing my mouth off about what I thought should be done in our community. I've had recent conversations with Bill Dutra, who's been wanting to put a museum on our waterfront for decades now, and he felt that the environment was not conducive for him to do it because he had a run-in with the city decades ago. Other business owners have had similar situations, and the reason why they're coming to talk to me now is because they feel that we're one domino away from this being from there being economic development on our waterfront, and from there being much more activity on Main Street. That's why the Spradlings decided, and the Gomez's bought that block from Front Street to the waterfront. That's why real hot yoga is there, and I take yoga now, by the way. It's sweaty, but I take it. And that's why they're opening up half staffs. This is all going toward that one domino that is going to take us to the next level. And me as the mayor, if you haven't noticed, I'm pretty passionate about this. I love this community, and I feel that when I go out into the county and talk about this community I sit on the board of the Economic Development Corporation. When I go to those meetings, I'm fired up about this community. And I tell them, you need to look out for our community. You need to give us money. You need to turn businesses over to us. And when I go to STA meetings and I talk about transportation, I talk about transportation because we need to have better connectivity within our own city. So why don't we have Delta Breeze have trips that come down from the Liberty Island to downtown during the weekend, so that we could come down and have a drink without worrying about getting into our car. Everything that I think about in this city is about how do we stay connected as a community, and how can we make it easier for you with tree-lined streets, etc., to make it easier so those types of things can happen.
Thank you. And John, would you like to hear the question again?
So for tourism, like personally, we're already trying to do it because we're opening a bed and breakfast, and eventually we're going to renovate the hotel. If I was mayor tomorrow, for example, that hotel on Highway 12, I will put the heat on them. What I've seen the last few months, they have them checking in once a month. The owner comes on Zoom, and kind of like, he's just kind of running around. Well, this and that, we're negotiating with people, current economy, et cetera, et cetera. That's looked like that the whole time my wife and I started driving up here 6 years ago. Nothing's changed. They got a fence in there and they want to get the fence down, and they just keep giving them more time and more time. And then somebody brought up recently, potentially they could be negotiating for like a state-funded homeless shelter there. And I asked in a meeting, I was like, do they allow that? And no, of course, it was give me the dead stare. Nobody's going to say anything when I speak. If that happened, think of how anti-tourism that would be. We've got a motel people have been waiting to open up to have more lodging in town, and we turn it into a homeless shelter right on the main drag. How does that make sense? You can't force, like I said, businesses to come in. You can't force owners to rent buildings if they're sitting there vacant. But what you can do as the mayor is try to bring those people together, make some calls. Some business owners that want to come in, and you got a landowner that's sitting there on vacant land. At one time, Burger King wanted to go in by Shell station. The landowner evidently didn't want to sell. Potentially even Togo's was going to go there. That would be really nice. I would say where Caltrans and PG&E are sitting probably belongs out in the business park. And no offense to Dope Tractor, that probably belongs out there too. And we would have things like, let's do something with these prime pieces of land so tourists want to come here. If you think of any waterfront town in the state that's popular, they have businesses, and they have a lot of businesses. And people in this town, especially with my wife and I, there's this big competition thing. Oh, they're trying to do this and that. Well, no, our bakery cafe is a 30-year dream. It doesn't have anything to do with the other bakery, but two bakeries can thrive. And I use the example always, Monterey Bay Pier, 30 places selling clam chowder, and they're all busy. And that's what Rio Vista needs. That's the way you get people into this town. We need to fill up the storefronts, but it's not just going to naturally happen, especially when you discourage new businesses and you discourage current landowners. Nothing's going to progress. You have to bring people together. Thank you.
Okay, it's time for us to start winding things down. In my estimation, you've covered a lot of ground. And it's time now for closing remarks. You'll have 4 minutes. And John, you will have the first closing remark.
So in closing, I definitely want to reiterate transparency, transparency, transparency. My goal as mayor is to bring the people with me up there into the seat to vote to the will of the people, unless there was some like emergency type of thing like this, life-threatening. Other than that, the people in the democratic process decide. They vote for the representatives, and the representatives are supposed to represent them. And that's what I intend to do. And I also intend to clean up City Hall from the financial mess that it's in right now. It wasn't even, we'll talk about, we got these certain city employees and auditors, and we got some accolades or whatever. But really, just a couple of years ago, they were right side up and had a surplus, and now we're upside down. So something went bad there. Through all of the plans, and I haven't been here for that time, but the revamp plan 10 years ago, I saw it when I first moved here. Somebody sent me a link, and they're like, look, the big circular road coming across the bridge, the consultant said then, in the waterfront plan, shops and businesses, and the waterfront pathway. Well, like I said, aside from what RioVision has done, what has this city done to execute any of that? Like what's happened? I don't see it. Maybe it's invisible things that we're talking about. City Hall, to me too, I also don't accept the notion that all of the employees are qualified on staff. And I don't accept the notion that some kind of a bad culture has been cleaned up, because I've heard from ex-city employees that just exes since I've been going to meetings who all use the word toxic working at the city. And if it's toxic working at the city, and in a way, like my wife and I are customers, right? We're like customers coming to the city looking for a business license and planning commission approval, and all we get really is like harassment, and we're feeling the toxicity. So I believe the culture definitely needs to change. And if there's any money to be got that we're not paying attention to, and even if, for example, the developer fees that were not collected are not collectible now, the people of this city deserve to know how much money wasn't collected, under whose watch, why wasn't it collected? The people actually deserve to know that. It shouldn't just be buried in, well, that's just the way it is. Because if you think about status quo, and I'll close out, don't vote for me if you feel like the status quo right now, everything's great, feeling good about the city, you like the way it's run. Why would you vote for me if they're doing a great job? And I don't want any votes just based on a mailer or a yard sign. I want to vote for people that feel like I feel like there's work to be done, things need to be corrected, and we want to see this town come up together. And that's regardless of who you are, what area you live in this city, what political party that you're a part of, if you're for these rights or not those. We're talking 1,000% about Rio Vista. That's what we need to focus on. Laser focus on Rio Vista, its health. And what will happen in the end is we'll have a more beautiful city, we will have more tourists, and we will have more storefronts full, and we'll have a town that we can all enjoy more because we live right here. Thank you.
Thank you. 4 minutes.
4 minutes, short time, that's why I took notes. I'm going to take it up here because we've been talking down here a lot. In the coming decade, I see our quaint river town as a connected community with tree-lined streets and economic vibrancy brought about through more activity in our downtown core. This means tree planting programs. When you talk about Airport Road down to the city, there's a desert out there. Better public transportation options within our city limits, and trails that all lead to our downtown core. This is going to help with economic vibrancy. This means more medical services, healthier food options, a mix of restaurants and cafes, so we're not concerned about getting onto our dangerous highways, which we know needs to be resolved. This translates to engaged citizens that are excited to be Rio Vistans and are proud to be in Rio Vista. Having said this, I recognize that change is inevitable for sure. This requires well-informed elected officials that are ensuring water supply is sustainable, public safety services are exemplary, obviously, and we have local jobs and housing so that our youth have a reason to stay within our community. As a critical thinker and as your vice mayor right now, I never shut the door to new ideas and recognize that there is a balance between our community today and what it will be tomorrow. Having served on the general plan working group for several years, this has provided me with very specific insight into what our community desires now and what it will desire in 20 years from now. The decisions I have made and the decision I make have all been supported by collaboration with the numerous boards that I reside on and the network of community leaders that I've reached out to, ranging from Solano Transportation Authority, the Solano Economic Development Corporation, Solano Together, the Solano County Orderly Growth Committee, the Sierra Club, Travis Air Force Base, and our ranchers, farmers, and even California Forever. I talk to everyone because you need to have the opinions of everyone. My vision for a community takes into consideration everything from economic vibrancy downtown to pathway systems to connect our disconnected developments that I had talked about. As one that has worked in leadership and side by side with you as an individual contributor, I have a balanced perspective on our community's needs. My qualifications as a business person and a public servant, coupled with those that support me, that should put you at ease, I hope. I've been endorsed by the Solano County Orderly Growth Committee. I've been supported by the endorsed by the Solano County Democratic Central Committee. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. I've been endorsed by Sheriff Ferrara. I've been endorsed by District Attorney Krishna Abrams, Supervisor Mitch Mashburn. All of the farmers that I talked about earlier support me. All parties, all viewpoints. So this has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat. All these people cross into every category that there is. I'm asking for your vote because I have no motivation other than to carry out what you want for our city.
Thank you. Now it's time to share his news.
Let's give a hand to the illegal women voters Solano County. Thanks for women. I would super appreciate all these chairs, front, not the ones by the gate, there's no ones here. Standing up against that wall, cover body, stabbing your chairs in front of the side.